All right, welcome to Black Men Speak. I'm your co-host, J.R. Stewart,
And good evening, everyone. I'm your co-host, Tommy Duncan. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
and tonight we're going to finish our conversation that we left off last week, and hopefully we can shine some light on a few things. And actually, Tommy has uncovered some really interesting research. But before we get into that, let's thank Liquid for our theme music. Please hit the like, share, and subscribe, or hit the like button and the subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. And then make sure you spread the word, share information about our show to help us grow. And you don't have to necessarily do it in that order. But at some point, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and then make sure you spread the word.
So, folks, when we were wrapping up our conversation last week about celebrating Veterans Day and celebrating those who have served, whether they be in the military, whether they be folks who have fought, bled, and died for the cause of freedom, especially those within our communities. One of the things that we didn't really have time to discuss ad nauseum, but begin to talk about was the impact of the habits that we are living in our households, and the how we got to that conversation is we began to talk about how our children are influenced primarily by athletes and entertainers. And that's like looking at the big screen and a small screen when you look at sports, football, basketball, baseball, soccer, or entertainers in the movies. Whether your favorite actor is, I don't know, Denzel Washington or whomever that happens to be. But a lot of our kids, when you talk to them in late junior high or high school and you ask them what they want to be when they grow up, not every child is like this, but most of them want to be like that person who's throwing the ball, shooting the ball, who's on a big screen, because that's what they see. And they kind of see, they visualize what they can be by what they see. And one of the things that Jimmy and I began to talk about, but ran out of time, is how we have to begin to provide a little bit more vision to those great Americans in our community who have been firsts. We talked about Mae Jefferson. We talked about people like Benjamin Banneker, who helped design Washington D.C., which a lot of our kids may or may not know. We talk about people, who were the creators of even just common household items, like the ironing board or the stoplight. We've talked before about the person who was the first person to be able to store blood and is in essence responsible for the millions of lives saved because of being able to store blood for long periods of time. And so when you talk about wars and things of that nature, this comes into play.
Right.
But we have to begin to have a conversation. No, we have to change our habits if we are going to reach a different outcome. So I know you have a lot in your head, Jim, and I know we've talked about this at several different angles. What are your thoughts about this, man? Because I mean, when the point that you made that I think that was very appropriate, you can't blame everything on racism. Sometimes you have to look in the mirror.
Well, that is true, Tom. And um, I have a few people that I list as life mentors, and one of them is our frat brother, Tony Brown,
Oh
who's
yeah,
had a tremendous impact on shaping the way I think and having me and forcing me to look at the world from different eyes. And Tony is famous for saying that everyone who opposes you don't necessarily oppose you out of racism. Sometimes they just oppose you out of group survival. And we have to understand that. And then the other thing is everyone operates in their own best interest. And so we have to start looking at life as to how can we start doing things to improve our condition? Does it really make sense for us to spend 99% of our discretionary income with non-black businesses and then complain about the economic conditions? We will never catch up with other groups in America, wealth-wise. I believe you pointed out that based on maybe last year's numbers, it's projected that we're to have at least $1.2 trillion in spending power this year. And we'll wait to see if that's really true or if it's more or a little less. But still, with $1 trillion at your disposal, we should be able to make that $1 trillion work as if it was $8 or $10 trillion at least. And that's not asking too much to circulate money within your own community before you allow any of it to leave. The other thing
And
that
that,
we hit on, Tom, was the television.
yeah,
Television is killing our community. Um,
literally, literally.
yes, because our kids who not, even though you may see a black doctor on TV, somehow they don't desire to be the black doctor. They want to be the LeBron James, and they want to be the football player or the baseball player they see on TV. They want to be the celebrity type, But very few actually make it traveling that path. You're you'll have a much easier time in life trying to become a doctor or a lawyer or a scientist or a mathematician. Um, and it's not just enough, Tom, to get an education. We have to excel in education. We have to have the grading curve bent because our kids are scoring so high. We need Harvard to say, hey, we need affirmative action for Asians because there are too many black kids getting in and they're messing things up around here. Um, we should not accept our kids graduating 2 and 3 grade levels behind on high school and somehow thinking they accomplished something. We have to set the bar much higher. And then, Tom, the center of all of this is we got to bring back the belt.
Well, Jimmy, that's you bring up a very, very good point when you talk about disciplining our children and taking responsibility for being parents. I can't say it's every household, but I definitely hear too many households, and not just in our community, but in a lot of different communities. But it probably has a disastrous effect in our community more so than anyone else. Is that you have kids who are setting the tone and running the households, and a young adult or a young person is not going to really have enough foresight to understand what's in their best interest. But I see a lot of kids who are running households, kids
Yes.
who have agendas. There's nothing wrong with being involved with a lot of stuff. But, when it comes to making practical decisions beyond the 2 day, that can cause disastrous results.
Now, we got a question on the chat line or a statement, but you can speak to it. We need more black businesses to spend our money with beyond barbershops, hair salons, and barbecue restaurants. I've been kind of saying the same thing myself for a very long time that we need to get past hair care and barbecue. Those can't be the only businesses that where are the black banks? Where are the black investment houses? Can we do something more besides hair care and barbecue?
We can, Jimmy, but this is the issue. I know that most businesses, we have a lot of businesses in a very narrow spectrum. You brought up very good points. Barbecue places, beauty shops, barber shops. You got some fried chicken places or some, soul food restaurants, but it's a very narrow spectrum. But when you start talking about scaling those places, that means access to capital, and that means a lot of financial discipline. When you start talking about habits that make a difference, financial discipline. We just talked about the fact that with that $1.2 trillion or more that we spend every year, that dollar doesn't bounce once within our
No, it
community.
does not. It
That
goes straight
that
away
that
from
is
us.
fiscally irresponsible.
Yes, it
And
is.
quite frankly, it would be very difficult because I know there was a article that I saw. I mean, it's been years ago. I think it was a couple out of Chicago. I don't recall their name, but I do remember that they made a commitment to spending 100% or as close to 100% of their money, with black-owned businesses. And one, it was difficult because to the person who chatted or texted in once, it's very difficult finding grocery stores. All of these different things that we don't even think about, much less banks. But we do have black banks out there. But the challenge is this: having the fiscal discipline to go beyond convenience in order to do business with your own community, and having the fiscal discipline to withdraw your money from places that are convenient that aren't reinvesting in your community. So we've got to have that conversation. It's not enough to have businesses out there. You have to do business with them. You may have to drive further like other folks do. You may have to spend a little bit more. Are you willing to do that in order to make that happen? And are you willing to withdraw your money from other businesses that are not contributing to your household or your community?
Well, let's talk about that for a second, Tom. The article that you sort of briefed me on about black women expenditures in hair and beauty products. Now we know that Alberta Culver and Revlon have
Right.
wrapped up about 90% of the black beauty product market. And last time I checked, neither one of these companies are doing a whole lot in the black community as far as
Right.
hiring, scholarships, um, or appointing their leadership teams to reflect their customer base.
Mhm.
Now, if you can, Tom, take a moment and give us a quick overview of the article and kind of what it highlights, because people may not realize that this is such a high number.
Well, one of the things that I found very interesting about this is that as a demographic group, and this is a subsection of that black folks spend 19% more than other demographic groups in beauty and grooming. Even though per capita we are significantly less, but in terms of overall amount of spending,
Right.
we spend about 19%. But when you look at overall beauty supply products, and this was what stunned me, and I was like, this can't be right. 90% of the spend was by the black community when it comes to
I
beauty
believe
supply
it,
products.
Tom.
And that I was like, that's got to be off. 90% of it.
Yes.
When you start talking about net worth and spending, they looked at the 1%, and 1%, 5%, or whatever it is. But you look at the top 1% of those who own wealth, in the United States of America. 96.1%, about 1.2 million households in America that represent that 1% of overall wealth is the white community. Um, they, on average, have a net wealth or net worth of 8.3 million. Otherwise, 50% of that 1% within their community has more than 8.3 million. 50% have less. 1.4% of black folks are represented in that top 1%, and their average net worth is their median net worth is 1.2%. So otherwise, white community, median net worth 8.3 million. Black community in that 1%, median net worth is 1.2 million. But the thing that got me, 40%, and I think this was a Huffington Post article, 40% of households within our community either have net zero or negative net worth. 40%.
Well,
That
Tom,
stunned me.
well, we don't know, and it's not our strategy because we don't understand the overall um, playing board. You're going to play on the board what the chess pieces are doing. Part of your job is the reason that 1% is so wealthy because they found how to tap in and provide goods and services to the people below them, and in
Right.
return, we give them money.
Mhm.
And so they end up with all the money. We end up with all the junk. And this is the capitalistic economic system. I mean, it is designed to deliver goods and services to as many people as possible. And so we have to understand what it's all about and how to play the game. And at some point, we have to kind of figure out how to provide goods and services to those who have their money, not just feed on ourselves. So we're going to have to get out of our own areas at some point of providing hair care and barbecue. And let me just say this about the hair care and the beauty products. We don't manufacture any of those, and the ones who do, it's hard to find them. They're not. They don't have any critical mass. They're not Revlon. They're not Alberta Culver. They're not any of the big TCB. They're not any of these big companies. They're little small mom and pop shops just trying to survive. And so they're not delivering products to enough people where they become consequential. And so as a result, we don't steal money or take money from other groups. We don't go into the white neighborhood and set up shop. We don't go into the Korean, Asian areas and set up shop. They come into our neighborhoods and set up shop. They suck money like a vacuum cleaner out of the black community. Between them and the church, there's no money left.
You didn't bring the pastor into it, did you?
Yes, I'm bringing the pastor into it because I don't think he's doing enough to put money back into the area where he makes a really good salary.
You bring up a very good point because, of course, we are the most churched community in the country by far. If you go into black communities, and if you go into poor black communities in particular, the poorer the community, the more the churches are. I'm
Yes.
trying to figure out the logic in that, but when you think about it, Jimmy, if you even look at where we came from, if you go into South Dallas, you go into West Dallas and other areas where there's a higher per capita of poor people, that's where they seem to have the most churches. And I guess the question is it so they can kind of, for lack of a better term, make them feel better about their condition, or is there something different that you can go to the poorest areas in the country and throw a rock in any direction and find a black church?
Well, one of the commenters uh, said we don't set up shop because you're not allowed many times.
That's
Um,
true. That's true. This is the difference, Jimmy. Self-esteem. I can guarantee you that if you and I, it doesn't matter how much money we probably had, we are probably not going into Chinatown and set up shop. We are probably not going into a Middle Eastern community and open a gas station.
well, Tom, that may be true, but I'm not sure if there are any forces out there that are stopping us other than ourselves.
True.
That's
I
not
would
to
agree.
say there are not legal issues with getting permits, getting occupancy certificates, getting inspections done to open up a business. But those are just business requirements that everyone has to kind of go through in hoops. But for us to say that there is some force out there that's stopping us from doing these things, buys into that whole control narrative that someone is holding us back. And I think the forces that benefit from our fears and for having us think this way, they're the ones who feed this narrative to continue to have us believe that we can achieve. So, but we need to have a strategic plan, and I would say that we start with food because everyone has to eat on a basic level. And if we can't get to a point where we can't build a grocery store in our own neighborhood to provide food for our people, then there's really no hope for us. You go into Detroit, where the Muslims and Arabs have taken over. I mean, they took over the poorest areas of Detroit, rebuilt the areas, shop stores, businesses all over, all Arab, Muslim owned. But they spend their money. These are people who are just as poor as some black people, because a lot of them are living on welfare and food stamps. But they make that money work for them because it stays in their neighborhoods, and then they flip it with each other over and over and over. It's the ripple effect. And somehow we just hadn't found a way to do that.
Yeah. Another interesting thing about this article that I was reading, when it talked about the overall net worth within the primary communities, I believe, and I think these numbers are a little bit low, Jimmy. I don't know if that means they were dated or maybe they're more recent. It's because of the healthcare pandemic. They said that the average net worth in the white community was about $116,000. I remember reading an article probably a year or so ago where it said it was closer to about 170. Average net worth in the black community was $1,700. And I do believe that is consistent because I remember reading an article probably within the last couple of years that co-signed on, literally less than $2,000 net worth,
Right.
average, within in the black community. And, when I was reading this article, it said that it would take almost 228 years, for the black community to catch up to reach parity, with mainstream America. I believe in the Hispanic community, they said about maybe 84 years in order for them to reach some degree of parity. The how part they didn't really talk about, but that it talks or it speaks to how catastrophic economically we are doing relative to the mainstream community. And it has everything to do with our habits and our priorities. One of the things that it talked about is, the high propensity of folks within our community to buy from, brand name stores, Lord and Taylor and all of these
Right.
other places. When we get cars, we'll go get a Mercedes Benz or a BMW, but we're living in a rickety apartment or something of that nature, and all of those
Correct.
things are taking money out of our pocket. There was a guy who was actually, pretty wealthy. He said, the poor spend money and or basically pay their bills. The middle class, they live to accumulate debt, and the rich, they live to accumulate wealth by making their money make more money for
Right.
them. And so it all has to do with the mindset, which all starts at home.
Well,
When we talk
Tom,
about those habits,
that is
yeah,
true. So one of the we got another comment on the chat line.
okay,
So the person says that other cultures are taught to be monolithic. Um, and I guess it kind of points to to maybe the Asian culture. And I guess that presupposes that maybe the black culture is not taught to be monolithic, not taught to support the culture and other black people.
I
Let's
guess
speak to
that
that real
depends
quick.
on what they mean by monolithic. I don't understand what they mean by monolithic.
That somehow skin color still differentiates us from other Americans and other cultures.
Because if you think, I mean, every culture has its nuances, whether you're talking about the black community, Hispanic community, Asian community, white community. What I will say is this: if you look at the numbers on the paper, we are least likely to make commitments in our interest economically. And I can't say it has anything to do with us not knowing better. But if you spend your money with someone else, you can almost guarantee that they will keep your money and you will never have any of your own.
Correct. So another comment on the chat line is we can sit and talk about our problems forever. Does anyone have any solutions or suggestions?
Absolutely. I mean, it is what we're talking about here today, Jimmy, because at the end of the day, it's fiscal discipline, it's sacrifice. I mean, again, there are a lot of small things you can do within
Right.
your household and within your family and with your children in particular, for those out there who have children. The biggest habit, Jimmy, is if you have no net worth or if you have negative net worth, the biggest habit you got to change is stop spending more money than you got. It does not take rocket science to figure that one out. If you spend more money than what you got, I mean, if you make $50,000 a year, but buy more house than you can afford, you buy more car than what you can afford, even though you may look good, you spend money at all of the high end department stores, buying clothes you can't really afford, you will always be broke. The biggest habit we have to change, all things being considered, is we have to spend less money than we make. Number two, you have to spend money within your community. It's what you call group economics. There are a lot of folks who have this. There is no rocket science, Jimmy, that we're talking about. Spend less money than you have.
Yes.
Build you a rainy day fund. Three, build you at least 6 months, if not 1 year worth of household money or household six. Oh, there you go.
Survival money.
There you go. 6 months to 1 year worth of household expenditures. So if something happens, somebody loses a job, then you got 6 months or 1 year worth of cushion.
Yes.
Spend money within your own community and hold them accountable to you to make sure that they are helping other folks, so that it's not just us individually or individual households who are making their future and building generational wealth, but collectively we begin to create a longer narrative in terms of creating intergenerational and economic wealth within our community.
Well, let me ask you this question real quick. Is style more important to the black community than actual wealth?
Is what now?
Style more important than actual wealth.
For instance, or what would be an
Like
example?
for instance, over the weekend, the wife and I were riding around part of the city. Um, the air was quite bad because there was a water treatment sewage plant in the area. And even though the houses are quite run down, there are lots of nice cars parked in those driveways.
Right. Okay, got it. Yes. Clothes, cars, jewelry. I don't remember the last time, unless you have unless you are investing in precious metals in the market. If you want to put some money into some jewelry, put it into precious metals. Okay, instead of that stuff that's going around your neck that's not putting back in your pocket, invest in precious metals. Instead of spending, on average, our household 8 hours a day with the television on, spend it in a book. Learn about investing, learn about markets, learn about precious metals. That requires fiscal discipline. These are real practical solutions. It starts with your knowledge base. In terms of going out, let's say 5 times a week or 4 times a week, cut it in half, twice a week. I mean, when you add up, Jimmy, the average meal for just one person maybe being $15 to $20 a week, and then you're not even talking about drinks if you're an adult and you're drinking alcohol, that adds up easy to $400 to $500 a month. And the question is, where does your money go? If you look at the opportunity cost of what you're eating out, as opposed to preparing your meals,
Right.
taking sandwiches to work, and you decide to put that, let's say if it's $500 a month, which isn't very difficult, okay, 4 weeks, $500 isn't very much if you go out to lunch every day in a
That's
month.
true.
Let's
That's
say if you take just half of it, $250, $300, and you put it into a rainy day fund, or you put it into the stock market, or even if you put it into a conservative bond, when you look at what that is going to create for you in 10 years, 20 years, that's a solution.
Well, Tom, I'd like to propose another solution, and that is the black middle class accept ownership of the problem. And the black middle class using discretionary income. I'm not talking about your mortgage, your rent money, your car payment, but some of the money that, like you say, your lunch money, your cigarette money, you go to the club, happy hour money, and we come together with the purpose of raising money and investing in our own communities. If we don't do this, if we don't open up those grocery stores, those butcher shops that we've talked about, other businesses to provide goods and services to our people, we certainly can't expect other people to do it. And some of the areas that I'm talking about, where you were just talking, where the household incomes are, barely making it from month to month, we can't expect those people to lift themselves up when they have no money whatsoever. They can't even get through the whole month without being upside down to do this. So those of us that have some extra money, we have to accept ownership of this problem, Tom. We have to go back. We have to put our money there. We have to do this. And I would suggest that we come together in groups of 100, more if you can, of people who can come up with $1,000 a year, $20 a week to invest. And those groups of 100 set a goal to open up one business a year in the black community with $100,000 seed money, and plus 100 customers that that business is starting off with, 100 marketing agents, 100 word of mouth, 100 people giving you positive reviews on Facebook and every place else, then there's no reason why that business shouldn't be able to create a couple of jobs for some local people there. And hopefully even make a profit and get a return on your investment. So it's not like this is charity. We can make this work if we just decide that we want to do it. The biggest obstacle that we have is that the black middle class don't want to put their money into the black community.
Jimmy, you know what? I was doing the math on this. 100 people times $100 a month.
No,
I mean,
$1,000 a year or $20 a week.
Okay, so that's okay. $20 a week times 100 people. That's $8,000 a month, right?
Right, that's probably $100,000 a year is a goal.
Okay, $8,000 a month. That's $8,000 a year, right?
Right.
So that's $80, 100 people times $20 a month. So that's $80 a year. I mean, that's $80 a month. And so if I put that one, two, three, that's $8,000 a month, right? Times 12, that's 90. hmm, Times 12, that's $96,000 a year, right?
Right.
You can do something with that, man.
You
I
can
mean,
do
because
something with that, Tom.
it's a small part of fun, but
Right.
this is the key, Jimmy. It's not even about the amount at this point. It's about the discipline. So you invest, right?
Right.
It's you're gonna win some and you're gonna lose some. And what
That's
people need to
correct.
understand is that some of your investments are not going to pan out.
Right.
Just like in the stock market, even the wealthiest people, some of their Warren Buffett, whomever it is, or even if you look at Bill Gates, some of their ideas did not pan out. Some of those investments pan out, but it's the discipline that makes the difference in terms of creating wealth. It is sticking with the process. And Jimmy, this is probably the biggest hurdle when we start talking about folks who are asking for solutions. Learning to trust the process.
Yes.
You brought up a very good point. Some folk sometimes have a very difficult time trusting people within their community. You have to come up with a process, exercise discipline, and trust the process. Not be stupid and throw your money away, but you have to come up with a solid process or business model and trust the process.
I agree with that, Tom.
But
And
you have a great model there. That's $96,000 a year, and that $20 a month is probably at
$20 a week.
I'm sorry, $20 a week, Jimmy. That ain't even really barely a good meal for one at Papa Do's or
That
any
is
seafood
true.
place. We eat
Yeah.
more seafood per capita than any community. That's not even a good seafood meal
That
a
is
week.
true. You're
And
talking
so
at least $40 at Papa Do's for a good meal, plus
ex-
tips and every drinks and everything else. Um, and
that's a
so with
solution.
that, Tom, I mean that business would not have to worry about funding because you already have a group of investors. So if you need more money, you already have a monthly revenue stream coming in where you can continue to invest in the business. Somewhere, somebody in that group is going to be an attorney. Somebody in that group is going to be an accountant or CPA. Somebody there's going to be a marketing whiz, internet person. So you have talent within your investment group that you can tap into without having to go out and spend money on these services. And on, like I said, in that business, we'll have at least 100 customers because you're not going to go put your money into a business and not go patronize it. You're not going to bring your friends and family down to the business that you own to patronize. So this is how you get it off the ground with a customer base. This is how you get it off the ground with some positive reviews on the internet. And this is how you get it off the ground without that business having to worry about crawling on their knees to banks or other investment outlets for a second round of funding or third round. See, we have to understand, Tom, that how many businesses do you hear about who start off with $100 million and then they go back into the to the market for round two of the investments or round three of funding. So if they can't get started and survive off millions, hundreds of millions of dollars without getting more, then we have to understand that the process sometimes calls for a second and third round of investments for businesses. So I don't think we can just put some money in it and then walk away from it and it's just supposed to survive on its own. We have to, play by the rules that have been established and realize that this is going to be a lifetime commitment to these inner city businesses that we start. And we can do this across the country, Tom. We can come together. I mean, there are, 36, almost 40 million black people in America, and somehow we can't get 100 people in every major city to start one of these groups. I mean, I just don't believe that we can't do this.
You can do it. It's just a matter of trust and discipline.
So we have someone else pointing out that the minimum wage is $7.85, and let me see. Should we see ourselves as black first or last? That's the topic head for tonight. I guess we can go ahead and maybe answer that question real quick, Tom. As black people, should we see ourselves as black people first, or should we see ourselves as wealthy, wise, smart, intelligent, honest, good people, and then somewhere at the bottom of the list, we just happen to be black?
Well, quite frankly, it would be nice to be able to say that you can see yourself other than being black in America. But even if you decide that you're not, somebody else is going to probably remind you that you are. Not that that really matters, but what you have to also understand is that regardless of whether you are among those deca millions of people who are here, who whose ancestors were brought here forcefully, or you talking immigrants who may come here from the Caribbean, who come from Africa, who come from some other country, leverage common experience and shared interests. Because at the end of the day, Jimmy,
Mm-hmm.
there are folks who are very clear that their color binds them. And that's not 100% with everyone. But when they start speaking economically in their best interest, that answers all questions. Because, there's an old African proverb that says, there is no me without we. And if you need to use that in order to create your own economy, if you need to leverage that to create your own protection, if you need to leverage that to create and strengthen your own culture, you can say what you will about being all of these other adjectives and not black. You have to own your culture. You have to own your own outcome. And good, better, and different, you have to establish, in my opinion, Jimmy, a code of conduct that we hold each other accountable to. Everybody is not going to think alike. Jimmy, you and I do not think alike, but we
Right.
do have common interests that we agree upon, whether it's politically, whether it's socially, whether it's economically, whether it's where we come from. We have a vested interest in each other's success because we understand that if we do not hold ourselves accountable for being successful in this country, in our household, and in our communities, granted, somebody else is going to continue to keep their thumb on our neck, and we will continue to have this same conversation 10 years and 10 years from now and or 20 years from now. So that long diatribe says, you know, in my personal opinion, we see ourselves black first, and we have to hold ourselves accountable to the greatness that we have and stop allowing other people to redefine us. We have to own our culture, our habits, and our results.
Well, Tom, I can agree with you there. Um, and I'm going to borrow from our Asian brethren who do not like being called yellow people.
Okay.
And even though there was probably a period where um, there was some effort to make this stick, they fought really hard to make sure that it didn't stick. If when you allow yourself to be defined by color, we have to be careful in that those who define what the color is, what it means to be black, is something positive, and it's not being a thug. It's not
Right.
going to jail or being, your rite of passage is through prison. It's
Correct.
not, sagging with your pants. It's not being poor and stuck in poverty. It's not, being a thief or a person who victimizes and is a parasite on society. You can't allow others to define your culture and who you are. And so it bothers me when people say, this black person, because they're educated or speak well, is not black.
Right.
As if, okay, what does it mean to be black? It means that you speak in broken English. You have to look a certain way, act a certain way. Um, so this is the trap that I would like to make sure that we don't fall into, that we get a chance to define who we are as black people and what the black culture is. And we can't leave it to other people. And if we start teaching our kids that they are better than what the rest of a society may tell them that they are, that maybe they would start achieving more than the rest of society will not necessarily accept from them, but expect of them.
No, Jimmy, I mean, you're exactly right. When somebody else owns your history, they own you. And so there's a difference when you start talking about black people, the first people on earth, the first people to create math, science, government, economies, astronomy. and all those things. But see, a lot of our there's a segment of our population who doesn't understand this. There's a segment of our population who doesn't know this because they don't know their history. When your history is owned by someone else, they're going to define you. And that was, part of my point in answering the question the way that they did. You have to understand your history, not defined by other people, but understanding the totality of human history. I mean, when you talk about our culture, you're talking about the most creative, the most genius of any group of people that
I
have
agree. That's
ever
true.
lived on earth. I mean, so many other groups have monetized and become fabulously wealthy on our creativity and our knowledge. We have to become masters of that. We have to own what is ours.
So, Tom, I don't know if you've been keeping up with the chat line, but there's
I
some
have
interesting chat conversations going on. So let's get ready to wind down, and let's just say this: that I fully expect the middle class, black middle class, to step up and to take ownership of this and to do more. And with that being said, I'm going to just outright say it. I'm outright ashamed of the black wealthy class. The wealthy black folks have not done enough to reach back and lift up economically black people. If you're worth hundreds of millions of dollars and you haven't given back, you should be ashamed of yourself. These black athletes and politicians who are filthy rich, I mean, it's nice that you give a scholarship out here and there and do a few nice build a baseball park or give money to United Way for a boys club or something, but that's not creating a job. That's not putting food on someone's table. That's not elevating their lifestyle. These are the things that we need to be doing. That's what the black community needs: an investment, an infusion of capital, and to bring goods and services to the inner city like never before. There's no reason why people should have to go to the store and buy canned goods, and it's all authentic canned goods. I mean, Tom, this is no lie. I mean, when I lived in South Dallas, I went to a Minyards down there off Ledbetter and Bonneville. Um, and every time I go in the store, the milk was always going to expire the next day. Every kid on the shelf is dented. The bread was always stale. You have to go all the way to the back just to have a chance at finding a decent loaf of bread that wasn't about to go bad on you. I mean, it's like they took all the crap that they couldn't sell anyplace else around the city and brought it to the stores down into the hood to sell the product and raise the price of it because this stuff is not cheap. I mean, this happens to our people all the time, and we have to say enough is enough. We may live in the suburbs and don't have to deal with it, but far too many of our people still have to live with it and deal with it. And we should be ashamed that we expect someone else to step in there and do something about it when we don't do anything about it. I mean, forget the black wealthy class. They turned their back and shit on black people a long time ago. They're not coming back. The LeBron James of the world are not coming back. Oprah, not going to do a damn thing. The Obamas, hell, $250 million and they hadn't helped one person out of poverty. These folks are not going to come back and do anything. So it's going to be, if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be the black middle class. And if we don't find a way to come together and do it, then we're going to forever be falling further and further behind on the wealth gap with other groups.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up an interesting point. I can't really speak to all of those people individually. I know that there are probably a lot of folks, and I know LeBron has created a school for young children in underserved areas. I can't really speak to a lot of the other people that you mentioned, and sometimes they do it quietly, Jimmy. But I would say that there is definitely a larger number of folks in the middle class who have some discretionary time and discretionary income, but more importantly, they have the knowledge to help advocate for those who need the help the most. The reality of it is sometimes folks who are part of the middle class are beholden to their employers who ultimately hold them accountable. And sometimes they're afraid. They're afraid of their jobs, so to speak. And that's where folks who are entrepreneurs, folks who are independent, have a little bit more flexibility because folks who have jobs, are afraid to speak up sometimes. Just
Right.
like one says or does something, in their work environment that they know isn't right, but they understand that they aren't in positions of power, or they don't have political cover in those areas to ensure that they keep their jobs. So, no, these are very good points, Jimmy. Very good points.
So, Tom, we're a little over time, so we need to go ahead and wind down. But let me say this. We need to go back and review the comments on our chat line. It's been blowing up.
Okay.
There's some interesting comments that are going on there. I mean, they have a very interesting discussion going on outside of what we're talking about. But
Okay.
let's next week, let's go through and read the chat line,
Okay.
and let's respond to some of the comments that people are bringing up on the chat line. We're going to address those next week. The show airs every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Central Time. We're here live, and we do have a phone line, so if you want to call and participate, you're more than welcome. The number is posted. And then, of course, you guys know the chat line opens up about 10 minutes before the show starts, so you can start getting your questions in, your comments in early. And Tom, with that being said, I'm going to give you the last word to close it out.
All right, folks. We want to thank you again for joining us this Wednesday, every Wednesday at 9 o'clock p.m. Central, where Jimmy Stewart and I, Tommy Duncan, talk about some of the most provocative topics in the country, targeted specifically at our community. So if you have not done so, make sure that you subscribe to our channel. Make sure that you like this show if you actually like this show. And if you don't like it, tell us what you would like to see.
Still like it if you don't like it.
There we go. Like it if you don't like it, so you can tell us what you want to see and what you would like for us to address. So we'll look forward to joining you next week on Wednesday at 9 p.m. where we'll discuss some of the things that you've been sharing about this show. And until that time, we want to thank you for your time. We ask that you be safe, especially during these times. And of course, as we say every week, continue to fight the good fight. Thank
Yes.
you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank
We're signing off
you.
for now.